Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
Gowdy to Trump: when you are innocent, act like it. Representative Trey Gowdy, R-S.C., urged President Donald Trump and his lawyer on Sunday to stop flailing at special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation and to let the probe continue unimpeded. When you are innocent, act like it, Gowdy said on Fox News Sunday when asked about Trump's repeated Twitter attacks on Mueller, whose probe has become increasingly perilous to the president and his inner circle. If you've done nothing wrong, you should want the investigation to be as fulsome and thorough as possible. Gowdy's comments came a day after Trump's attorney John Dowd called for Mueller's investigation to be shut down. Gowdy issued the same exhortation to Dowd: "If you have an innocent client, Mr. Dowd, act like it." Trump himself spent the weekend lobbing repeated Twitter attacks at Mueller's investigation over the weekend, including on Sunday, when he labeled Mueller's team of prosecutors hardened Democrats. "The Mueller probe should never have been started in that there was no collusion and there was no crime," Trump tweeted Saturday evening, naming Mueller in a tweet for the first time. It's unclear why Trump, who until this weekend largely spared Mueller's probe from attacks, reversed course. But the decision follows the news that Mueller has subpoenaed the Trump Organization for records, a line Trump has previously suggested could be too far. Gowdy's comments were notable coming from a senior GOP lawmaker who has been deeply involved in the House Intelligence Committee's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. The committee's Republicans concluded last week that they found no evidence Trump or his allies aided the Russian effort, but Gowdy emphasized that their finding was limited because they were unable to interview central witnesses tied up in the Mueller probe. Those witnesses, former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and others, have either pleaded guilty or face indictment. Another House witness, former White House aide Steve Bannon, declined to answer many of the committee's questions, Gowdy noted. "You don't know what you don't know," he said, adding, "Within the universe of folks that we've interviewed, there is no collusion between Trump associates and Russia." Gowdy also said he's going to withhold judgment on whether the Justice Department's decision to fire former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe 2 days before his scheduled retirement was the appropriate punishment for allegations that McCabe lied to investigators. Though McCabe has blamed Trump and his allies for tarring his reputation and orchestrating his ouster, Gowdy argued that McCabe has tarnished his credibility all by himself. Gowdy noted that it was independent investigators and a Justice Department review board that determined McCabe deserved to be fired for lack of candor. But he said he wants to see the full report of McCabe's conduct before passing judgment on the punishment. "The FBI is who recommended that he be fired," Gowdy said. "It wasn't crazy House Republicans, and it wasn't the Trump administration. It was his own fellow agents." Ben Holland: Trump not as persuasive as he thinks he is. The head of Senate Democrats' campaign arm chided President Donald Trump on Sunday for not being the most effective surrogate for his party, coming after the GOP appears poised to lose a special election in Pennsylvania in a congressional district the president easily carried in 2016. Trump is actually 0-2 in campaigns where he actually showed up, Senator Chris Van Hollen, DMD, told host Casey Hahn on MSNBC's KCDC. "When he shows up, he's obviously not as persuasive as he thinks he is." Van Hollen, who is chairman of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee for this cycle, took special delight in the election of Alabama Senator Doug Jones, which occurred after the president stuck with GOP candidate Roy Moore and held a rally on the border between Florida and Alabama. Trump also made a last-minute appearance for Rick Saccone, the Republican candidate in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district, but Democrat Conor Lamb was the apparent victor in last Tuesday's election. Lamb holds a 627-vote lead, but the Associated Press has yet to call the race a Sacconi and Republicans' Mueller recount. Regardless, the GOP was successful in holding on to 5 House seats in special elections in 2017, although the margins of victory in those districts swung sharply against historical trends and could hint at problems to come in November. Europe fears Trump is out to kill the World Trade Organization. Europe is worried that U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum are just the beginning. The EU's bigger fear is that Trump's ultimate goal is to kill off the World Trade Organization and rip up the current rulebook that underpins global trade networks. European trade officials argue that their American counterparts are sick of WTO judgments they think are too lenient toward China, and are now ready to take a sledgehammer to the whole system. America is well advanced in its plans to throttle the WTO's appellate court, where countries resolve disputes over everything from subsidies to anti-dumping tariffs. Washington's strategy is to block the appointment of judges, which should bring the system to a halt next year. To the Europeans, Trump is making a cynical calculation that the U.S. is the world's #1 economy and can outmuscle any opponent in a trade dispute, without the need for international arbitration. In a world that returns to the law of the jungle, Trump reckons he wins. Both Brussels and the WTO are moving into crisis mode over this attack on the appellate court. The EU reckons that America's might is right approach will sap confidence in global trade and undermine economic growth. Until recently, the prevailing theory in Brussels was that the U.S. was simply trying to exert leverage and was holding the system hostage over other concerns. Advocates of that view say Washington has not disengaged from the WTO in areas where it still sees that the body could help. On March 14, for example, the U.S. launched a WTO challenge against India over export subsidies. In recent weeks, however, the mood about Trump's ultimate motive has shifted dramatically. Even the normally highly diplomatic European Commissioner for Trade Cecilia Malmström reckons that Trump is planning to take a wrecking ball to the system, and that it's time for the EU and its allies to draw up a Plan B. In a closed-door meeting with trade ministers in Sofia at the end of last month, Malmström issued a stark warning that there was no common solution to America's block on the appointment of WTO judges, because Trump's policy is not to take the appellate court hostage, but to destroy it. While ministers were discussing ways to convince the United States to lift the block on the judges, Malmström was very pessimistic about the appellate body and said that Trump wants it to fail, said one official in the room. A second official confirmed Malmström's remarks. French Trade Secretary Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne told Politico in an interview this month that Trump has a policy which aims to gut the dispute settlement system of the World Trade Organization. No judges left on the bench. There's now a race against the clock to save the court. The appellate court is supposed to have 7 judges, but will be down to 3 this year, the legal minimum required for it to work. According to Arantxa Gonzalez, head of the International Trade Center, a joint UN and WTO agency, there is a risk that some will underestimate the value of a dispute system with an independent appeal function, and only value it when it has gone. This would be taking a 20-year step backward in international economic governance. By the end of 2019, the court will be down to 1 judge and be unable to work. The appellate body is the most powerful instrument in the WTO, because it has the authority to pass final rulings on trade fights between countries. Former WTO Director General Pascal Lamy likes to call the appellate body the jewel in the crown of the WTO, because of the key role the body has played in preventing the emergence of major trade wars since its creation. Roberto Azevedo, the current Director General of the WTO, told Politico a response is needed quickly. The dispute settlement system is a fundamental pillar of the WTO. Without an impartial and effective path for resolving disputes, you would very quickly see members take matters into their own hands, leading to a dangerous cycle of retaliation and counter-retaliation. The current situation is of grave concern. We need to find a solution quickly, he said. Asked about Washington's position, The Office of the United States Trade Representative declined to respond directly to the EU accusation that the ultimate goal was to destroy the WTO. Instead, the USTR referred to page 28 of its annual trade report, which states that the WTO is undermining our country's ability to act in its national interest. First among those concerns is that the WTO dispute settlement system has appropriated to itself powers that the WTO members never intended to give it. On March 10, the U.S. agreed a joint position with Japan and the EU that it would seek to enforce existing rules by working jointly on current and new disputes in the WTO. While some EU diplomats took heart from that, Malmstrom seemed far from convinced. Only 2 days later, she expressed concern that, on the appellate court, the U.S. has not changed their mind. Time for Plan B. Not all the trade ministers in Sofia shared Malmstrom's bleak assessment of American motives, 3 people present said. Countries including Italy and Spain said they want to keep an open door for the Americans. They cautioned that the EU should avoid confronting the US and should instead try to work with it. There is no appetite for any initiative that would alienate the United States, one diplomat said. Malmstrom, however, said the EU would need to eventually look for a Plan B, according to the 2 officials, because Plan A risks leaving the EU without a proper international dispute settlement system. Another senior trade diplomat said that behind the scenes, the EU and other countries are already acting. Faced with the prospect of WTO dispute settlement crumbling, a large majority of members are already looking into a Plan B, some sort of whatever it takes not to end up there. France last week emerged as a strong supporter of Malmstrom. Trade Secretary Lemoyne said he would push for the WTO to continue its work as a judge despite Trump's opposition. It is necessary to think about all the forms of Plan B, which make it possible to maintain a mechanism for those states that are in favor of having it. Because there is still a very strong majority of WTO countries that wish to continue to have this type of dispute settlement, he said. So I think that now we must actually start to be creative, and therefore France will also put proposals on the table to restore efficiency to the WTO, both in its function as a developer of standards and in its function as a judge.